All right. Good morning, everyone. We may have a couple more people joining us because I know of a few who said they would, but we'll get started and they can join on their own time. I have lots of questions about this act. I found this one a little more challenging than the first. So, Sue, I'm going to be peppering you with questions today to help me with my understanding. But do you have any comments you'd like to make to start us off this time?
Yes, I think we're now going to see Melisande ourselves. Is she going to live up to the hopes and the aspirations of Rudel? Is she, in fact, beautiful even? Is she beautiful? Is she a gracious lady? What is she going to... I mean, everything hangs on this, doesn't it, really? I mean, Rudel has been worshipping her from afar in his poetry. And the other question is, will Bertrand get to see her? And if he does, will he be able to persuade her to come to the ship? So a lot hangs on this. And you can see from the stage directions, this is a really beautiful setting. I mean, opulent, lilies everywhere. This lilies for purity, of course. Marble, everything you can think of as a setting. Of course, Sarah Bernhardt will have seen to all that because she wanted to show off herself. She is a great actress and she wants to appear at her best. But we don't see her first, and this is something Rostand does frequently, isn't it? He prepares the way, and so we can see from the surroundings what sort of person she is. And we don't get to see her to start with. We see the pilgrims. Just notice particularly the window, which is going to play a large part in the act and in next act, and the couch strewn with cushions. And here we have a group of pilgrims who are waiting to see Melisande. So we're all ready to start Act 2.
Okay, wonderful. And you and I had discussed in advance that kind of proceeding through this one scene by scene might be a good idea.
Yes, I think so, because then we won't miss anything, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, and I do have questions, I think, almost for every scene. So the curtain rises on this lavish, I just imagine absolutely opulent, lavish scene. And then a little bit later, the princess emerges also in lavish costume, bejeweled with pearls and her mantle. But then she wants to put those aside in that later scene. We get the sense of a costume. And so I had the sense that the palace itself, I don't know if costume is the right word, but it's just, it's not representative of the identity of the princess. Is that, does that sound fair?
No, I mean, she's the daughter of someone great, and this was the palace, presumably where she grew up. This is her normal setting. And of course, it does set her off beautifully. And the audience in at the premiere thought this was wonderful. I mean, this is one of the things they expect from Sarah Bernhardt is something beautiful to look at. And they certainly got it. Yes. So I think the way she dresses is her own choice.
Okay. Interesting. So we'll get to the question of the mantle in a moment. So, so this is her identity is this lavishness because there's go ahead. Yeah.
Well, she hasn't appeared yet. And all we know is the pilgrims, and they haven't seen her yet either. So we're all sort of waiting, like everyone is before Cyrano appears. You know, we learn a lot from the pilgrims. It's quite important, some useful things here. That we learn that the princess is kept a virtual prisoner by someone called Le Chevalier des Armes aux Armes Vertes, green arms. He's in green weapons and things. And he is employed by her fiancé. So we learned that she's actually engaged to be married to the Emperor Manuel of Turkey. So she's not a free woman in any sense. And we also learn, which is really interesting, as they chat amongst themselves, did you see that beautiful young man? Now, the handsome young man. This must be Bertrand. Now, we didn't know he was young and handsome, so this is news to us. But he is now on the quay shouting that he's going to see the princess at any cost. So we know that is going ahead, out of sight at the moment. Yes. And unfortunately,
it's their whisperings about him that alert the guard to his presence.
Absolutely, yes, yes. So now the Chevalier is now going off to make sure the palace is secure.
Okay. So maybe it's premature to ask this question, but I have no idea how to say the merchant's name. How do I pronounce the merchant's name?
Squire. Oh, hang on a minute. Can we wait till that scene? I haven't got there in my notes yet.
Well, he's mentioned in the first act by one of the pilgrims, and that's one of the questions. I'm just going to call him the merchant for now.
Squasio Fico. I would say Squasio Fico.
Squasio Fico.
It's just a mouthful.
Is it meant to be a comical name? Because it reminds me of in the Romantics, that one of them masquerades as the Marquis of Ostia Forquercita or something, but it's some very elaborate name. I
think there's a hint of humor in the word. Yes. Yes. And the ending in Fico may be connected with vaccio, vacare, to make, to do. So this is someone who's doing things. I don't know. I'm just imagining that bit, but yeah. Yes.
Okay, so at the end of scene 1, it says, "We can keep cool. The youth went first to furbish up his arms with that old Genoese. Spare thy alarms. Squarcio Fico, merchant shrewd, will know the peril. Very cunningly will show means to outwit it. He fears the emperor's laws and will befriend his rival for good cause." So I couldn't quite make sense of that.
We're not meant to yet.
We're not meant to.
Okay. I think it's just a hint that something's going to happen. So something to look out for.
But
why does he not like the emperor? And that we will find out when he actually arrives in person.
Okay, but his not liking the emperor will prompt him to form an alliance with anyone who's trying to
absolutely
undermine the emperor's. Okay.
So
Okay. Anybody have any other questions about scene 1? All right. So scene 2, we meet the princess. And okay, I have questions. Well, one of my questions on this scene was the symbolism of the palm versus the lily. You already mentioned the symbolism of the lily as purity.
The palm is because they are pilgrims. They've been on a crusade to the Holy Land, and therefore they've been given a palm to show that they have been. And so it's a memento, if you like, that they can take back home with them to show that they've been on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And the lily, of course, is Melisandre's symbol almost at this stage in the play.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the line that I was curious about is, "The palm will tell the pains the flower effaces, the desert, and thy beauty its oasis." So the palm represents the trial that they had to go through, and the beauty, seeing this beauty is the reward.
Yes.
For what they
So they have two mementos: one of their hard, difficult trip to Palestine, and one, the beauty of the princess who gave her the lily.
Okay, wonderful. So I was curious about, well, do you have general comments you want to make about her appearance? I have a question about something she said in these first lines.
Well, just that what we can see is actually reinforced by what the pilgrims say.
Mm-hmm.
And that reinforces about her gracefulness and how all the stories about her were true. And it's very interesting what Melisande says to them, isn't it? That she also has a distant love, which is unfulfilled for France.
Mm-hmm.
She has never been to France. She feels French, and therefore she has a distant love for France herself. And she envies them, she says. Yeah.
Okay, that is so she says, so you will soon see France, you ye happy folk. And then she says, I am like to these my flowers. We blossom both neath skies that are not ours. Lacking the homeland where true souls are plighted, we seem to blossom, feeling we are blighted. We seem to blossom. Seem to blossom, feeling we are blighted. So that's the first, well, it's an indication that she feels at odds in some way with her environment.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
and also, I mean, she says, my life, sorry, I'm just translating it myself here. My life consists of living without knowing for myself. And that's just like Rudel, isn't it? Rudel is loving someone that he doesn't know, he hasn't seen. So she, yes, as you say, she is not happy. She is not happy. She feels regret for a country she's never been to. So, and this, of course, is partly because she's had all the poetry.
Okay.
Do you notice how she makes a wonderful entrance here? She stops. She comes down this huge marble staircase, and she stops every so often so that they can see her, and says a few lines. Then she steps a little bit further and makes a real entrance down this staircase. You can just imagine, can't you?
Well, it's funny because that the first poem I translated by Rostand was the tribute to Sarah Bernhardt. That was for something celebrating her.
Very good one. I thought that was really good.
Thank you. But the first line was, only you, I only remember my translation because I don't know the French, but it was, only you know how to palely descend a spotlighted stair. Yes. So I get the sense that she often appeared at the top of a stair.
Absolutely, yes. She played lots of princesses, and her aim is to please the pilgrims. They've made a trip to see her. After all, they've made a detour, and she is making the most of her descent, yes, and being very gracious, yes. The great lady, really.
Yes. So, but it was interesting, lacking the homeland where true souls are plighted. So it was, I was confused about why she was describing another land as her homeland. But again, we're supposed to not entirely understand that at this point.
I think even, I don't know whether she was born French, but she certainly feels she is French. And therefore she misses France, even though she's never been there. She is homesick for her country. She feels French, and she speaks French after all. And, you know, it's...
Okay. Anyone else have questions about that scene?
I got the sense that she feels like France is her inherit, or like her acquired home, as through the fact that, and later from reading this act, that she did so because of Rodel, really, like how she's basically fallen in love with this other country because it has someone like that. That's how I saw it, but maybe that's not, there's not enough in this act to give that impression.
It's not very clear, is it, really? I mean, she is descended from some emperor, but why she is in Tripoli and not in France is not made clear at all. And maybe it just adds to her mystery. But the fact is, as you say, she has this deep fellow feeling with France, which is her soul's homeland, she feels, yes. And it is partly, did she feel like that before Rudel's poems? We don't know. We don't know, really, no.
Okay, scene 3.
Yes, she opens the window, which has been closed, so that they can see her just as they leave as well. Another gracious act.
Mm.
But scene 3, we get the real Mélisande, don't we?
Mm. And well, it's quite abrupt, because the opening line, you know, Sorismond is saying, what a divine amenity, what condescension. The divinity was kind today with a new prettiness. Thou knowest I am kind for idleness, is the translation here. So
yes. Well, in French, it's boredom, ennui.
Boredom.
Yes. Yes,
A
exactly.
confession that it was a show for it was for their sake that she
Indeed.
was kind and gracious.
And not just that, though. There is something else. I mean, she does it for the pilgrims, but she does it for herself too, doesn't she? She does it for herself, because she feels she's responding to Rudel's love for her, brings out the best in her. And this is what Frere Trophime was saying on the ship, that this love has actually improved her soul as well. Can you improve a soul? Probably not. It has gone straight to her soul and made her a better person. She says that as well, doesn't she? So yes, okay, she is bored, and it's lovely to have to feel she's an important person to the pilgrims, and of course to Rudel particularly. But it's his poetry that has touched her soul in itself. Yes. And notice the importance she gives to songs and poetry. That's a theme right through, the importance of poetry, the power of poetry.
So the first thing that struck me in this scene was just the image of shedding that mantle embroidered, gemmed, thou crushest me. And emblem fit art thou of that still heavier weight, unseen of all, which I must bear. Take my pearls also, take my whole disguise. I am coiffed in fairer, fitter guise with these my flowers. So she wants to remove all these trappings, and her what feels like a more fitting to her is just the image of these lilies. And so that's just striking to see her make the appearance that everybody expected, the top of the staircase, bejeweled, grand, and then as soon as no one's looking, long to throw that off and be her true self. And then
she wants to create a good impression on the pilgrims, partly because this will get back to Rudel, and for her it's a way of communicating to Rudel. You know, they've never seen each other. He doesn't even know, we know whether she knows him or not, but she does know him, and this is very important, of course, that she does already know him, and that he is already important to her. And she says it's a bit like being able to correspond with my lover overseas, through the poetry, through the mention that the pilgrims will give when they get back. Yes, so she has to do all this for various reasons, but it's very important as well to say that it is for the good of her soul. She is very grateful to Rudel for giving her his love, because it is necessary. In French, it's le sublime de cet amour mais nécessaire. In the mediocre, ordinary life, this is something which lifts you out of it. His love lifts you out of ordinary life. And it's the same theme that we had in Act 1.
So I assume that's the line here. Thou knowest how my lonely heart is lit by this bright love whose rays have stolen it. So it's not quite the same as the French, but and so she says, perhaps Prince Rudel will hear by this device my heart in exile here. So it is a way of just getting the pilgrims to sing of her beauty and communicate that, and hope that gets back to Rudel.
Exactly. It's a way of communicating with Rudel. Yeah.
Luke? Luke.
Oh, so just so I'm clear, she hears the Rudel songs from the pilgrims who come and sing these songs, and she hears about her beauty from them, that Rudel is, and then so she wants to make sure that she's putting on the beauty that she hears from the songs, so that then the pilgrims go back and tell Rudel about the beauty so that he sings more. So it's like a circle of inspiration.
Yes, that's
Okay.
right. It's circular because Rudel first heard of the princess from the pilgrims, if you remember, and now this will get back to Rudel through the pilgrims, that she is as beautiful and so on. And Rudel will continue to sing these lovely poems and songs about her.
But so the interesting thing is, we then, if we look at her lines, the way she defines this love, does she even want to meet him? Or does it need to be, does it require that it just be this circle of inspiration from a distance with no direct encounter?
Rostand sometimes implies that it's better to have a dream than have it realized. And that may be the case here. But for Sorismond, Sorismond is saying, well, if you never meet him, you know, you're never going to make love with him, are you? So, you know, but she can't understand that. She really can't understand that. And what Melisande replies to her, but what I love about him is his love, and I love his soul. And then she runs out of ways to express herself. I love, so it's uplifting for her as well. It's that kind of love. And actually, Rostand, in all his plays, you will know all the in Cyrano, for instance. I mean, Cyrano never gets the woman he's in love with. That's a distant love, if you like. And it's the same with L'Aiglon, although that's not quite so strong. There's the same idea that this purest form of love is the highest form. That's what he's saying, and that's what he says throughout his work, really.
It seems much stronger a theme here, at least so far, than it is in Cyrano, because Cyrano at least longs to have her as his lover. I mean, would, if he could, he would. With Melisande, I'm not quite sure. It seems more, I mean, it was interesting because there's this line that made a previous line in Act 1 more emphatic to me. Melisande says, "Thou'st have all things too clear," because Sorismond is saying,
yes,
remove some sorcerer's magic ring and make to pass his face before you in a crystal glass. You could see him. She says, you want things too clear. And she says, too misty, thou. And that reminded me of the line in Act 1 about something not being valuable if it's too close at hand. So it seemed like it literally does need to be a distant ideal.
Exactly. It is easier in a way to have a distant love for someone than to see them warts and all. But that's not being stressed. The idea is, yes, the idea is, again, the word rêve, dream, is used by Melisande in that very long speech towards the end, and where she says how she walks in the gardens and imagines that she is in touch with him, and she's sad, but that's good. And she dreams about him, and that sends her reason to sleep. So to some extent, there is this conflict between reason and the dream. Yes, yes.
Here it says, my dream leads through a misty labyrinth, little by little, leads to paths supernal. Reason sleeps in the tinkle sempiternal. I don't even know what sempiternal.
That's what the French is as well.
Okay. But yeah, so I got the sense that dreams versus reason, you know, physical physicality or material existence versus an abstract ideal.
Absolutely. And Sorismond is definitely of the material persuasion. And she sees what is expedient, or what perhaps most people would think would be the obvious thing, really. And her next speech is, yes, we're rather short of spurs and helmets here. What we need is some more young knights. So they're not allowed any young people. We learned that from the pilgrims, that the chevalier will not allow any young men, although he will let ugly young men pass. That's a humorous moment. That he will let ugly, that's rather a cruel jest, I thought, at the expense of one of the pilgrims. Well, I'm young, yes, but you're not handsome.
So another interesting thing here is, I think we need 3 categories, perhaps: husbands, lovers, and then what would be the third? Love invisible. Because she says, Sorismond says, truly, will you wed him? And she says, why not? A consort's not a lover, certainly. You find him tiresome? Oh, imperially. And then she describes why the ways in which her fiance does not know her at all. So,
absolutely. So that leaves her free. Yes.
It leaves her free. So she has a husband, but then there's the lover, but then there's another kind of lover, which is, I think, Sorismond's kind of, but if someday a lover veritable, glutton, should come to thy heart's empty table, which I assume she means like physically
yes.
present.
Yes,
Okay.
if a real young man makes it here and you fall in love with him, how about that? And it's very interesting to see what Melisande replies. My invisible lover protects me too well from making that mistake. Well, we shall see. We shall see. And Sorismond is quite witty then. So she says, well, it's not your angel, then it's your guardian lover. Not a garden angel, a guardian lover. Yes.
Okay.
There's always this contrast, isn't there, about what's expedient, what's practical, and what really is best for the soul. Is it better for the soul to have something you can't reach, something just out of reach, something very noble? Should one always be aiming very high, higher than normal life? That's the point, I think. And Sorismond really is fed up with this. J'en veux, I don't like this love of yours at all. I don't see why you should say thank you to him just because she's given you back your soul. And then Melisande says, well, sometimes I rather resent it too.
Interesting.
You see, it's such an effort, isn't it? Living up to her image. It's so hard for her.
Okay. Let's see. And then we have a lot more on the lilies, which I now understand, I think. Okay.
Laughter and normal life. Yes.
So, okay. So perchance thou art right, and these be evil flowers. I touch them trembling, drawn by ghostly powers. Their lonely pride chills a more lonely one. And laughter loves red roses in the sun. So there is something that it's somewhat of a burden to have.
Definitely a burden, I think. This image she has to portray.
Okay. But that she has the image she has to portray, but also, is it also so is the image of laughter, loving red roses in the sun, being able to enjoy the fruits of your ideals, to be able to, experience joy and pleasure from them, as opposed to the kind of loneliness of?
Yes, I think so. She's drawing the contrast between the life she has now, which is more like that of a lily, very pure and white, but hard to live up to, with an ordinary life where you live in the sun, you have laughter with people, the roses are blooming around you. It's a big contrast, and she is questioning it here. It's very much she's questioning it. Yes.
Okay.
Is this mysticness of the lilies, is it perverse? And then she stops thinking about it. She said, never mind, let's have Squasio Fico in and have some fun here.
Okay.
So that's the end of that serious conversation. But it was quite enlightening, wasn't it? That she's not just this beautiful figure with the noble soul. She is actually an ordinary, not ordinary, but she is a human, a real living human person. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's see, our next scene. I guess is really the conversation with the merchant. Is there anything?
Well, before that, we have the chevalier, don't we? Who comes, the knight that's protecting her, the huge man in green armor, comes in first and tells her she can't actually go anywhere. First of all, he says, I'm sorry I'm late getting your orders. That's because he's been giving orders that the palace should be guarded. And then he says, everything is ready for you to go out and trip in your boat, which actually, from the point of view of the play, that is very handy to know that the boat is ready. He then says, I'm afraid I've had to put people all around the palace to guard you, and you can't go out for a while. So he's locked up all her servants, all her ladies in waiting and so on, and set guards on every door. But he will let in, and this is where he doesn't realize Squasio Fico is going to be an informative person, as well as trying to get her to buy all these lovely things he's brought with her. He will let him in because he can't see it, what harm it will do to have these frivolities. And yes, so he lets her come in, and then we're on to scene 5.
And is that scene, I was trying to envision it being played. Obviously, it's an opportunity for him to communicate why she's been locked down and that there's somebody coming in to find her. But also, is it a humorous scene, these whisperings under his breath?
I'm not sure what you mean here.
Would it?
Oh, in the scene with Squasio Fico. Oh, yes. And what you said earlier, Lisa, is very impertinent here, because he doesn't want Melisande to marry the emperor, because the emperor is going to send all the traders like him, away. Okay. And he would lose his living, and so would the others. So anything that will stop him,
Okay.
Anything that will stop him, yes, he's just not keen on this marriage at all. He will definitely suffer in person. Yes.
Okay. All right. So on to scene 6.
Well, scene 5 is quite important, because now we're finding out from these whisperings of Squasio Fico that there is a handsome young man roaming around the palace, and we know who that is. And they're not letting him in, he whispers, but he wants to talk to you. And of course, Melisande assumes this is Rudel. What's his name? Oh, I don't know. I think he's a poet. Well, that fits, doesn't it? He's a poet. And then she's so excited. She calls out and pretends she's excited by some material. Can you manage to make him come in and see you? Says Squasio Fico, who's hoping for better treatment than from the emperor if anyone wins Melisande's hand. And then, yeah, scene 6, of course. The Chevalier comes in later. He's gone off and comes back later. And yes, scene 6 then is where Melisande and Sorismond talk to each other about who this young man might be.
So first they're just they're observing.
Well, Melisande pretends to be indifferent, doesn't she? He said, oh, this doesn't really concern me. So, you know, so Sorismond, of course, is at the window looking. And you seem troubled, says Sorismond. Oh, no, I'm not troubled at all. And then they hear the horn, which is Bertrand. We've been told Bertrand will sound a horn before he tries to get into the palace. So they hear the horn. And Melisande stretches out on the sofa saying, what's this got to do with me, you know? Oh, says Sorismond, he's so handsome. Oh, you can't see him from that far away. Oh, I can, says Sorismond. And he's calling out, and they come out to fight him, and he's got as far as the first door. And Melisande says, well, what's that got to do with me? And then there's a pause, and then she says, well, what's he doing at the first port then, at the first gate? So again, we're being kept on tenterhooks here. And of course, well, Sorismond said they're stopping him. Oh, poor man, does he give up? No, he's fighting, says Sorismond. Really? Now she's interested, isn't she? Oh, and he gets through, and he's already in the second courtyard, and he's fighting, and then she gets up. Of course, Melisande gets up now, and of course soon they're both at the window, aren't they? And all the action takes place off stage, and it's just very brief remarks, isn't it? He's fallen, he's getting up, he's moving on, etc. And that suits the action beautifully. We can't see it, but it is described to us. And then something quite important happens with Melisande, because her eyes meet those of the Chevalier, and that worries her. I mean, why do you think it worries her?
Well, they weren't supposed to see each other, right? What
happens sometimes when you see someone across a crowded room? Your eyes meet, you know. Well, she's quite shocked anyway. Ses yeux, j'ai rencontré ses yeux. Il vient de les lever et de me voir. So he has seen her.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Sorismond says so much the better. And then she persuades Melisande to throw down her sleeve just out in the lists. What I don't know what you call them really. The lists, yes, where they have these tournaments where knights charge at each other. And do you know about these? You know, in the medieval times, the tournaments, and each lady will throw down her sleeve to the man that she favors, and he picks it up and bows, etc., and vows to win on her behalf. And she actually does this, so she's getting involved, isn't she?
Yes. So can I pause? I just want to ask a question. I'm going to be a little bit dense, but so does she still believe this is Rudel?
We don't know.
Oh, okay.
We think perhaps she does. After all, he's a poet. He's a poet.
So is her initial reluctance, I don't need to look through the window, is to preserve the idealism, not to give him flesh and blood reality?
That might be one thing. When your dream suddenly becomes reality, it's a bit of a shock. I think she is worried that this might be Rudel, but is she happy? Is she sad? She doesn't know herself. She doesn't really know.
So how would you describe the initial reluctance? maybe she doesn't even know the meaning of the initial reluctance, but I appreciate this scene so much more after your description. I think maybe the translation made it a little bit difficult, but that at first she's not even approaching the window. Then she approaches the window and just looks out. And then she's throwing down her sleeve and involving herself in it. And she says, heed my prayers, defend your blood, and dye my sleeve with theirs. The silver samite bring to me, you'll bear it, but not till 'tis incarnadined. I had to look that up, but until it's turned like red with blood. And I mean, it's just such a physical, fleshy image after all the abstract whiteness of the lily.
Yes. I mean, the incarnadine is language that Rostand isn't using. He simply says it's white, change it to red.
Change it to red.
Yes.
That was for the sake of the rhyme.
Only bring it back red, he says.
But it is red with blood.
She calls out and he answers. Now they have communicated, and he replies, I swear it. Mm-hmm. So there's a community. I think you're right about this. It's very interesting, isn't it, Lisa? Why is she so reluctant? I mean, at the beginning of scene 6, as you say, this young man, and he's a poet, and then Rostand says, yes, but you seem anxious, you seem troubled. And so simply to prove she's not troubled, she pretends to be indifferent. And I think that's what it is. But of course, really, she is very much involved in this and very excited. But she doesn't want to show to Sorismond that she's affected at all. I think that's part of it. Yes.
Okay.
Because Sorismond also says, I don't know if you have this stage description, but Sorismond maliciously says, are you still bored? And then the reply is, don't talk such rubbish.
So she's.
But then they hear the horn, and then the fight gets going, and she gradually, as you say, she gets involved. And
so the maliciousness of that comment, you say you don't need a lover who's physically present, but look how excited you are now.
Yes, I think there's something in that, and especially if she thinks it's Rudel. Yes,
that's claimed not to need him to be close at hand, but here he is, and you're beside yourself. Or here someone is. Okay. I thought I saw a hand, but Stefan.
I have to do fall festivities, so I have to go. But I just want to thank you both. It was awesome. Because I thought I was dumb reading this some of the time because I'm not getting a lot of it, and knowing that you were feeling the same way. So, Sue, thank you so much for clearing everything up.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
See you next week. No, I sent out the link to the prose translation of the play, and I found that one to be even more difficult than Norman's translation. So I ended up going back to hers.
I mean, it's fairly accurate. Her translation is accurate. It's just that we're not used to the language really now, are we?
Okay, so, and then the image of, I mean, how I imagine this image that they're seeing through the window is this man is a great Hercules who's taking on fights where he's outnumbered and handling them all, just kind of dispensing with them all as he comes in to the palace.
And then the tension is ratcheted up because the chevalier with green armor comes in for his enormous axe, which is hanging there on the wall. And he says, oh, excuse me, but I have to shut the door for a moment, so they can't even see down the gallery, which is where the next big fight will take place. And now Melisande is quite honest. What's going to happen? I'm half dead, she says. Je suis demi-morte. And she's sure that the Chevalier was on that, who is an enormous man, we've been told, and of huge strength, is bound to kill this person. And she calls him a pauvre enfant. What do they say in English?
Where would that be? The brute? The Chevalier and Emerald.
Poor youth, yes, poor youth. With such a brute, he cannot battle. And of course, it's here, this poor child won't be able to kill this brute. Yes, exactly.
And I think there was,
you can hear
to the axe.
sound.
I think in Act 1 there was a reference to the axe that,
Yes, it's hanging on the wall. Yeah.
but then some suggestion that you can't even lift it, or I don't know, something to make it seem so
No normal person could even lift it. So he just comes in, takes it off the wall, and goes to deal with Bertrand. We know it's Bertrand, but Melisande doesn't. Melisande doesn't. And then you just hear the noises of battle. And then the doors, and what a dramatic moment, the doors swing open, and there is Bertrand with his sword in his hand, wounded on his head, and he throws down the bloody sleeve in front of Melisande. And this is so Rostand, this bit. This is so wonderful. Melisande, obviously drawing back from this rather ghastly sight. What have you got to say to me? And he says, poetry. Or what is it that say? Some verse. Some verse. Well, I suppose that, yes, you could translate it some verse, but verses, I think, verses, poetry. And he begins to write. Again, this is the importance of poetry, always in Rostand. Here is the poetry. This is what he's come all this way to do, is to say some poetry to her. It's lovely, isn't it? Don't you think that is... Anyway.
I think that was my favorite moment in the entire act. Is to, have your heart pounding from this bloody battle with the axe and the door is thrown open. What are you here to say to me? Some verses. And then just start declaiming the most romantic of poetry that you can. I hope everyone saw that I had my friend Antoine record these.
Yes, that was lovely.
He's wonderful at reciting these things. So, but I just wanted people to have the opportunity to hear how beautiful this recitation would be. And then these are the lines that were in Act 1 that are from Rudel being delivered by Bertrand. And interestingly, as he's here physically present, the whole theme of this is the faraway princess, like the distant ideal is the theme of the poem he's reciting to her, still sweating with sweating from the exertions of battle and covered in blood, probably. And he's reciting romantic poetry about the distant love.
And it's lovely that she can actually complete it. That these were the first lines that Rudel wrote for the princess, isn't it? About the princess. And she knows them so well. And Bertrand is surprised. How was he to know that she knew? I mean, they didn't know whether she had even heard of Rudel. And so that's a lovely surprise for him. And yes, they're from Geoffrey Rudel. And so you've heard of this strange love of his, says Bertrand. And now she says, this is the right time to tell me about it, to tell me about him, and how much she loves that love. J'aimais cet amour. J'ai senti près de moi l'âme de cet amour. I have felt his soul so close to me. Now, Bertrand has been wounded very seriously, and he says, oh, heavens, but then he is so badly wounded. All he can do is oh goodness. And now you can tell from the next thing that Melisande says, she leans right over him and she says, "Are you happy now?" Who does she think he is? She must think he is Rudel. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it, really? Here he comes, quoting Rudel's poetry. How does she know what Rudel looks like? She doesn't.
Well, and also he's wearing Rudel's clothes.
Oh, I didn't. Well, I don't. Is he? Did I miss something?
I think so. At the end of Act
Right.
One.
Okay.
At the end of Act
Oh, I didn't
One,
get that. I know he's all dressed up.
because it says, you know, you need to be able to gain entrance into this palace. I need to give you my clothes.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, I missed that. Thank
Not
you.
that she's seen him before, and this is some sort of disguise that it would be him, but still, he looks. I think he just looks the part.
Well, she doesn't. Yeah, he looks the part, certainly.
Right.
He looks the part, and he is about to say, "Oh yes, I am happy," because the one he's going to say, "I'm not Rudel."
Yes.
The one, but he's lost so much blood, he faints. He can't. And so that moment is put off. He's not able to say, "I'm not Rudel," because he's fainting. And they attend to him. And in fact, Melisande doesn't care what she rips off. I mean, I'm not quite sure which bit the grimp is, but it's quite an important bit. And to wrap him up. And then, of course, luckily, Squarcificchio has sold them some special ointment, which is supposed to help wounds. And so it's all right. His heart is still beating quick. Take that Arab medicine we've been given, you know, this sort of ointment. It's nice when things link up with the same before, don't you think? And so that was there.
Yeah.
And now. And so she's tending him very carefully, tending him. But he didn't have a chance to say who he was. And now, unfortunately, when he opens his eyes and she's leaning right over him, he is in love with her, isn't he? Or not exactly. I mean, it's not quite as definite as that, but he says, "I must be in paradise."
Yeah.
I must be in paradise.
Well, he's just lost himself in the moment. He, you know, having swooned and then woken up to her, forgotten the context momentarily, and is
absolutely
just
yes
by her presence.
And then of course he's still got his head on her arm, and it's the arm that she took the sleeve off. That's a naked arm. This is getting very physical, isn't it?
Yes.
And he doesn't quite know where he is. I wasn't very well. What is this arm against my cheek? And then Melisande realizes and goes, "Oh no, leave it there." "All right, I'll leave it there then." And then he says, "Oh, how lovely and fresh this unknown, wonderful arm is, this naked arm." And then she's very quick to take it away then, because she'd forgotten that it was naked, you see. And then there is this misunderstanding. He has not been able to explain why he's there. And he's had this marvelous awakening with this wonderful, beautiful woman leaning over him and says, "Well, who are you?" And of course, as soon as he knows who she is, he's horrified. He's horrified because
he's loyal to Rudel.
Sorry?
He's loyal to Rudel.
Absolutely. So, yes, absolutely.
The moment he recovers himself, he says, "We have to go."
This is not his princess. This princess does not belong to him, however beautiful she is. He is horrified. And then, quick, we have to go. As you say, we must hurry. Quick, open the window and look out. And of course, what they're looking for is the black sail to show that Rudel is dead. And Bertrand getting more and more anxious. Yes, and of course Melisande doesn't understand. So she said, "Well, there's a little ship there that wasn't there before." And then, yes, well, there are swallows round the mast, you know, I mean, it's all tense, you know, putting off the moments, really. And then, Blanche, des ailes d'Alcyon blanche. And so he says, now there's still time. Oh, and he begs the Virgin to prolong Rudel's. But Sorismund, Melisande hasn't heard what he's saying, has she? She's looking at his eyes. She hasn't understood at all the significance of this. Mm-hmm. She just says, look, Sorismund, what his beautiful, desperate eyes are, he's weeping. And he carries on, and gradually she understands that he is not Rudel. It's quite a long speech by Bertrand, isn't it? And he doesn't use the word Rudel at all. Il mourrait si content. Well, who is this Il then? Who is this man? Who is the flower of flowers and the star of stars, and all the difficulties we've been through, and then unfortunately he can't help seeing Mélisande's eyes, but he brings that into the speech, and he says, you know, he will forget all the difficulties he's been through as soon as he sees this beautiful forehead, as long as he can contemplate under these huge, these large, tawny, oh bother. Anyway, his eyes, these beautiful eyes, which are grey. Oh no, they might be mauve. Seeing those, without seeing him, you know, he is seeing Mélisande and thinking how beautiful she is at the same time as he's trying to say, you must come, please come. And really, if you hear somebody who wants to see you and they're dying and they're on some poor grabataire, some couch or something, that I'm talking about his last instant will be delicious. I mean, it's not actually tempting, is it?
So he's going back and forth between kind of introducing Rudel, or saying that's what, but then being lost again in her beauty. So he
he hasn't realized that Mélisande thinks he's Rudel. He hasn't realized that. And so he's trying to say, but without naming Rudel. So how is she to know this man is dying? He needs to see her, and he's dying, and he would be so happy to see her. And he's not well. In fact, he's dying. He's in a poor state, but at the same time, he can't help seeing the eyes. Yes. Oh golly, what the time has gone, hasn't it?
Yes. So we're left on quite a cliffhanger at the end of this. So who are you then, Bertrand? Come quickly. No.
I know. Wow.
Why so great a no? We'll have to.
It's
wait.
Very dramatic. Very dramatic.
Yes.
It's a wonderful act, that, isn't it?
Yes. Okay. Well, this helped clarify all my questions immensely. So I appreciate your guidance, and I think it raises lots of questions that I expect will be answered in the acts to come. Thank you. And I'll see everyone next week.